All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Grafton Select Board meeting for September 21st, 2021. I'd like to call the meeting order at 7:01 p.m. First thing I'd like to do is have everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I have a couple of brief announcements I would like to make to everyone, please. Just a reminder, for the first time back in a couple of years, the Harvest Fair and Apple Pie Social, the Congregational Church, will be holding their annual Harvest Fair and Apple Pie Social this Sunday, September 26th, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. In addition to the always delicious apple pie and crisp, there will be corn, chowder, chili, and hot dogs. They will have a huge yard sale, music, and raffle baskets galore. Where I know a lot of us are always looking forward to in person. So hope to see everyone there this weekend. Next up is just a reminder that what they're calling Gazebo Palooza will be held on October 2nd from noon to 6 p.m. in Grafton Center. It will be an afternoon of food, music, games with prizes and fun. It is to benefit the Small Stones Festival of Arts. The admission is $15 and children under 10 are free with an adult. There will be food from local restaurants, items from local retailers to bid on in the silent auction, and lots of musicians performing. Just a reminder to everyone that the Small Stones Art Festival exhibition will be open on October 15th and run through the 24th with many different special events. For a complete list of events, please visit their website at www.smallstonesfestival.org. And that's all the announcements I have. Do I have anybody here from the public who would like to make a comment to the board tonight? All right, not seeing any. At this time, I'm pleased to invite Cassie up here to discuss her Eagle Scout project. And if I could ask William if he could share the presentation on the screen for us, please. Good evening, Cassie, and welcome.
Hi. So my name is Cassie Brown. I am in freshman year at Grafton High School. I am also a member of Troop 2019, the all-female troop in Grafton, and I am here to propose my Eagle project, which is a trail behind the Grafton Public Library. So if you can please direct yourself to the presentation. On slide 2, this is a brief description of what my Eagle project actually is. The Eagle Trail is a roughly half-mile in wingspan width wide trail behind the Grafton Public Library. It'll be in lot 89 of town land. I really want this trail to be a resource for our community and our town and the library. And one of the big drawings of this trail is that it's completely sustainable. All of the wood and brush that we pull out gets put into a wood chipper, chipped into wood chips, and then laid down as the trail tread. I really want this to be a heavily trafficked, great place for our community. So on slide 2, I have a few answers to the question of why is this a really necessary trail, and that's that it's a sustainable use of some land that isn't necessarily being used right now. I know that there have been plans for this land in the past, and I really want this to be a good place for everybody to come together. There aren't a lot of hiking trails in the center of Grafton, especially in a place where there's a lot of people. So I would hope that people on South Street and North Street and Church Street would be able to have an easy hiking trail, as well as people who are going to the library. It's also a good opportunity for the library to use it however they want. There's some good places for nature walks, some good sights to see, and also there's a lot of local history in this land. There's an old road where you can see the stones lining the path of the old road. It's a really cool area. I really would want this to be something that people can see. If you direct yourself to the second slide, there's a picture of a tree that's right where the trail is going to cross. I know it's a little squished because it's in the presentation, but it's huge. It's a big oak tree. It's really beautiful, and I really would like people to be able to see this. So on the third slide, we have just a list of proposed materials. this isn't necessarily something that need to pay attention to too hard, but it is something that I want people to be aware of what we're using, what all the materials are, what the tools are. So those are my proposed materials. On the next slide, we have some proposed maps. The first picture is a GPS like satellite map. The second one is a more accurate map of what the land looks like today, and then the third one is very much inaccurate. Basically, I went back with the GPS and I walked back in there. I'm probably gonna adjust it as time goes on, but this is for now. That's kind of what the loop is gonna look like, just more spaced out into another direction. I have some proposed logistics. I have volunteers signing up through Google Forms. So when you sign up to be a volunteer for this project, you say your name, how many people you're bringing, any equipment, and the time slot. And if you're over the age of 18, I'm not going to have anybody using power tools. I can't use power tools as a scout in BSA. But if you do bring equipment, you come half an hour early. We do equipment checks. We make sure you know how to operate and use it. We make sure it's being used correctly. And then we go right into the next thing. If you look on the second slide, I have an actual chart with 3 groups. One which is over 18, one is older scouts, older people, one is younger scouts. It's based on age and skill. I would hope that there would be 2 time slots each day for every weekend. So it would be a 2.5-hour time slot on Saturday and Sunday. Having that twice. I would propose about 4 weeks. Might take longer, might take shorter, but this is my temporary plan for how long that's going to take. On the next slide is a budget. I'm reaching out to Koopmans. I'm reaching out to a bunch of different places for donations. But my total budget without donations would be about $1,571. So I would hope to get more donations, bring the cost down a bit. But that's my budget. So that's really all I have as far as proposals. I really would love this to be a place for our community, and the longer that I spend in scouting, the more time and the more I work on this project, the more I realize how much I really want this to be something for our community and our town, and the people around us, and this is me in the words of the Scout Oath, doing my duty to God and my country, and doing my duty in helping my community and helping my country. So I really hope that this is something that we can all appreciate together. That's my proposal.
Thank you very much, Cassie. That was a great presentation. Does any of the board members have any questions?
I'll donate the chipper.
Okay.
There you go.
And I will bring my chainsaw.
Yep.
All right.
Sure.
I do have one question.
Yes.
On the map that showed the path, there was one part of the path where it goes into stripes. I was just curious, what did that indicate?
That indicates wetlands, but you have to cross-reference the maps. That's a really old map on a really old GPS tracking software, and also when we were walking back in there, it's not like marshland as much. So I'm definitely gonna move it over to keep it farther away from that designated marshy area, but it's not gonna be that's just an area that's marked as marshy on that map. Awesome. It's taken off a little bit more on the satellite map. You can see. So yeah, that's what that is.
Perfect. Great job on the presentation. A lot of work and a lot of thought went into this, and it looks like it's going to be a great project.
All right.
Doreen, do you have a question?
I do. So I'll echo the words of everybody. Cassie, what a great presentation and a great idea. So congratulations on being an Eagle Scout as well. I really like how this complements the new library project. I particularly like the sustainability piece. I think that's great effort on your part and really forward thinking. So thank you for that. My question is, have you spoken to the Grafton Land Trust for support yet? And, the maintaining of this trail down the road for everybody to continue to enjoy it. Just wondering if you've thought that far ahead yet, and if you've contacted the Land Trust.
I have not talked to the Land Trust quite yet. But that's definitely something that's going to be in my future. I'll definitely be talking to them about whatever ideas that they might have. I also have coming up talking to the library tomorrow, talking to the library board of trustees. So I have a lot of people that I have to talk to going forward, and the land trust is definitely something that'll be on my list.
Great. Well, thank you. And you have my support. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions? So, Cassie, thank you very much again for the presentation tonight. I'm encouraged and excited to see your project come to fruition. How do people reach out to you if they want to help or donate?
If they would like to help, they can email me. I don't know how much they've taken off of the last slide, if there even is a last slide. But on the last slide, you guys can see that's my email address. You can email me at caspysong@icloud.com. That's what I've got for.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And anyone who is willing or can help out and donate for Cassie and her project, that would be great. If there's any help you need from us, I know you're going through some of that land back there into some wetland delineation. If you need any help navigating that, I'm sure the town's departments can help you navigate all of that process.
All right.
For you.
Great.
Does anyone else have any questions? No? Well, thank you very much for coming out and explaining your project. Wish you all the best. You've got at least 2 people here to help you out, so make sure you call them up on it. And if I have to give any of them a ride there, I will. So.
Why would I need a ride?
You better bring your chainsaw too.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I will. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Cassie, for coming in. We appreciate it. Okay.
Thanks, Cassie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cassie.
All right. So next up here, we have a scheduled public hearing for Grafton liquor license transfer. So this application has been submitted already, and it's for us to take some action tonight. Before we can take action, I would like the clerk, if they could read the legal notice for the public hearing, and then we will take a motion to open the public hearing.
Sure. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the General Laws as amended that an application has been made by Kailash Patel and Kanayalal Patel, representing North Grafton Liquors, Inc. for the package store all alcoholic license currently in the name of Grafton Liquors, Inc. Grafton Liquors located at 77 Worcester Street, Grafton, Mass. The application requested is for the transfer of the all alcohol beverage license approved by the Pledge of License and Inventory to Rockland Trust Company and approval of Malukamar Patel as the manager of record. The premises is a retail store located at 77 Worcester Street, Grafton. It consists of approximately 3,544 square feet of retail space on the first floor. There's one main entrance and exit. The emergency is in the rear. There's storage in the basement consisting of approximately 136 square feet. Upon this application, the Grafton Select Board will hold a public hearing in Conference Room A, Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, Grafton, Mass. On Tuesday, September 21st, 2021, beginning at 7 p.m. There will be a remote meeting participation available, and it will be posted on the September 21st agenda.
All right. Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I make a motion we open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to open the public hearing for Grafton Liquors located at 77 Worcester Street? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Welcome, Mr. Patel and Mr. Meridian. I know you're here representing the interested parties tonight. Do you want to give an overview on the transfer? You're on mute, sir.
Hear me okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Attorney John Meridian, Democus Law Offices. I'm here on behalf of North Grafton Liquors, Inc. Tonight, what we are doing is seeking approval of the transfer of the all alcohol package store license for Grafton Liquors at 77 Worcester Street. With me is Kailash Patel, Kayanalal Patel, and his son Malik Kumar Patel. Kailash and Kayanalal are purchasing the store. It's going to remain at the same location. There's no change to the structure. It's simply a change in business ownership. The hours remain the same, 8 a.m. To 11 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. for alcohol sales. Like I said, it's the same operation, and tonight we're seeking 3 approvals. Approval of the transfer to the new business, approval of Malik Kumar Patel as the manager of record, and approval of a pledge of the license and inventory to Rockland Trust Company as they are financing the transaction. Malik is the manager. He is tip certified. His experience working in a liquor store. His father is kennel all there with him. He works in the store in New Bedford as a cashier now, but he'll be working up the store in Grafton as full-time manager. So with that, I'll take any questions the board may have regarding the application.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone have any questions?
Yep, I do. Are your clients purchasing the business or business and real estate?
So they're purchasing the business and, as well as the real estate at that location.
Okay.
And the lease will be, from the business entity to the real estate entity.
Yep. Okay.
Any other questions from the board? So this is a public hearing. If there's anyone from the public that wish to come in and speak, please use the raise hand function. We can admit you into the hearing. Is there any further discussion or questions from the board for Mr. Meridian? John, we're just going to give a few minutes here for anyone in the attendees list that want to come in remotely. So just give a few more seconds. If I don't see a raise hand function, then we'll move on and close the public hearing. There's only 7 people on attendees tonight, and there's no one here in the public. So at this point in time, if there isn't any further discussion from the board or any questions, I can have a motion to close the public hearing.
I move the board vote to close the public hearing for the transfer of the package store all alcohol beverages licensed currently in the name of Grafton Liquors, Inc. Grafton Liquors located at 77 Worcester Street.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, declare the motion carried. We close the public hearing. At this point, now we have a consideration here for us to do a final approval for the transfer. Is there any further discussion or questions from the board? If not, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to approve the transfer of the package store all alcoholic beverages license currently in the name of Grafton Liquors. Grafton Liquors located at 77 Worcester Street to the North Grafton Liquors, Inc. Grafton Liquors, and as a part of this transfer to approve the pledge of inventory, pledge of license, and the change of manager to Melikumar Patel.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion for the transfer? All right, hearing none. Before we take a vote, it was a question about if we had to take a roll call vote tonight with Doreen remotely participating, and that's not the case here. She's just participating remotely like she would in any other meeting. So if anyone had that question. Okay, no further discussion. I'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. Good luck to you, Patels, and we look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Peter, I gotta run out to my truck for a second.
Okay. Let's take one thing out of order here, because I know Mr. Meridian's going to want to talk with Mr. Moore and Mr. Meridian, who are here tonight. Why don't we go ahead and move over to one-day beer and wine license for Tufts Veterinary School. I have a representative here from Tufts tonight to speak on behalf of this one-day license. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jessica Scott. I am from Tufts University. We have actually 3 beer and alcohol license for one days. They are October 1st, November 8th, and November 11th. They are all student functions, and we do have a TIPS certified server.
Excellent. Okay, does the board have any questions? No?
Nope.
Okay, Doreen?
Nope, no questions.
All right. All right, at this point, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to approve the one-day beer and wine license for the Cummings School of Veterinary Medicine on October 1st, November 8th, and November 11th, 2021.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, declare the motion carried.
Thank
Well,
you
thank you very much for coming out tonight. We
Thank
hope you have a
you.
great time.
I
Thanks for
do.
coming.
It's fun. Thank you.
All right, Ray is back. So if you don't mind, we're going to go back to schedule under C discussion. I want to introduce Senator Moore and Representative Meridian, who have come out here tonight. Good evening.
Good evening.
How is everybody? And
See everyone.
it is nice to see you in person.
Good to see you both.
Welcome. So just some context real quick before we get into the meeting discussion. The board has had several conversations over the past, you won't need that. That mic should be able to pick you up. Mike. We've had several discussions, even starting back a year and a half ago, that talked about, a local income tax option. And recently, past summer, we were talking about, what are the processes available for evaluating potential changes in the way 2.5 is written today. So during our workshop back a few weeks ago, we wanted to invite our local representation up on Capitol Hill here tonight. So I have Senator Moore and Representative Meridian who have come out here tonight on our invitation. And I just want to say on behalf of us, we appreciate you guys coming out tonight and having this discussion. So I wanted to turn this over to Ray first, if you would like to start. And
Sure.
he's going to provide a little bit more information in regards to his thoughts on Prop 2.5 and just what are the state procedures on going about making changes.
So we've had this discussion before about Proposition 2.5. And David, you and I had talked about this, and I think Mike, you and I have talked about this briefly. So I believe that Proposition 2.5 has run its course. And a lot of cities and towns are forced to do overrides, which come under a vote and can go up or can go down. Overrides actually cost the cities and towns more money than if we revamped Proposition 2.5. Now, and we've talked about, Proposition 4, Proposition 4.5, Proposition 3, whatever it is, it really needs, this issue really needs to get into study to determine, one, whether Proposition 2.5 has run its course and that it's no longer useful to most cities and towns. So when I say most cities and towns, it really doesn't, in Westboro, it really doesn't make a, Proposition 2.5 is just there. But in Grafton, with us having now 2 overrides, and we have a lot of commercial industrial things coming up, and there's going to be a lot of new growth in the next 10-year period. I get concerned what happens after that 10-year period, and the town really doesn't have an appetite for another override. So if we looked at it and you guys studied it, or whatever it is, put together a committee, with other cities and towns, to determine, one, whether it should stay at 2.5, or it should go to something else, or we should abolish it in its entirety. So, and go back to 1979, the year before it was actually put in law. So, I wanted to get your opinions on this, and then find out what the process is for us to get this ball rolling. It's a situation. It's not something that's going to happen in 6 months. It's going to take a long time, and it's going to take other cities and towns to work with us that have the same issues to revamp this and then bring it to you guys down in Capital City and make your decision. So it's the process. I want your opinion on this, and then I want to know what the process. Where do we start?
Well, I would say first, you have to remember back to when 2.5 came in. maybe in 1980. I think I was a junior or senior in high school when it passed. And that's right after Proposition 13.
I wasn't.
That was right after Proposition 13 passed in California.
Correct,
And it came,
yes.
then it came here, and we
Yep.
saw massive reductions in town employees and public employees.
Yep.
But part of the reason for people, I think, that they voted for it at the time, was that we had property taxes that were just getting unbearable for people to afford. So putting that in, so then 2.5 passes. If you now kind of equate that to the Chapter 70, what happened there with the study, that resulted really from a grassroots effort of city and town school committees working with their state partners in making it a grassroots effort. So it wasn't just the town of Grafton. I've had one other community, 2 other selectmen that approached me, said the same thing. It's not working. But you got to remember, this is I will always remember this. Before I got elected to even now, people have always said to me, it's the will of the voters. A referendum was passed overwhelmingly that the voters said that they wanted to implement 2.5 this type of procedure. So if you're going to, I think, if you're going to get any sort of traction, getting any changes done to it, it's going to have to be whether it's the Board of Selectmen Association, the MMA, Mass Municipal Association, the whole organization's making a grassroots effort to the legislature to look at this, whether it's, again, change it from 2.5 to 3.5, or whatever it is. But it's going to have to it's going to have to be more than just myself and Rep Meridian or the town of Grafton. I can tell you, I think it was my 2nd term. Everyone here know what the overlay account is? Well, that's factored into your 2.5. I tried to get that. I wasn't touching anything else, just the overlay account. I had legislation that would have removed that from the calculation of the overlay. And the amount of emails and negative input we received from the public, there was very few positive. They thought I was trying to undo 2.5. They thought I was trying to circumvent the will of the people. So it's really going to take, I think, reaching out to other cities and towns and having their boards of selectmen or city councilors putting the same effort into that they did in Chapter 70 into this type of reform.
I'll jump in quick. One of the biggest things is working with MMA, I would think, because I mean they're seasoned vets in terms of lobbying, and obviously they can work with all the local municipal officials. And I think that if you are going to explore something like this, you have a ton of homework to do, because you're going to have to talk to other communities. You're going to have to grow the consensus behind that. I kind of want to give you a little quick overview of how it could maybe be done. There's a couple of different options. So there's the home rule petition, which, and I guess maybe looking at the reso for later on, this would probably fall more under there, but obviously it's passed locally, then it's petitioned to us, and we bring it to the general court. There's by request. So any one individual as a citizen can petition us. We'll work with our respective councils in the House and Senate. We'll draft up legislation, make sure it's agreeable to whatever the constituent wants, and then we'll file it. Once it's filed, by all intents and purposes, it's your bill. And you go through the process of going to public hearings, you try to gain the consensus, it's yours. We can introduce it, but it's yours. If you want to go on a 30,000 foot level, there's the ballot initiative. And this is pretty in-depth, but bear with me just for a couple minutes. So it's a way for citizens to propose laws, obviously. So it's prepared by the petitioner. It's signed by at least 10 registered voters. And it's submitted to the Attorney General's office by the first Wednesday in August. And generally it's filed in an odd year, so that way it comes up in the even year, which is when they're there. The AG's office determines the validity and to make sure it meets the requirements. And they announce the certified petitions around the first Wednesday in September, which we just got for next year. Petitioners must collect 80,239 signatures and file them with the local election officials for certification 14 days before the first Wednesday in December. If there's enough signatures and it's Then it's sent to the legislature in the even year January, where the legislature can pass it, can substitute anything in it, or can take no action. If it's not passed by the first Wednesday in May, petitioner must collect another 13,374 signatures, turn them in for certification 14 days before the first Wednesday in July, and with the Secretary of State by the first Wednesday in July. If enough signatures are then considered, it then will go to the ballot. So that's more often than not, you see very big, comprehensive things that get taken to the ballot.
Which this was back in
Yeah,
1979.
right, absolutely. So that's a bit of the process. Ballot initiatives can be really good. They can also not really go through the legislative process to kind of tidy them up. So there's pros and cons that would be out there for that. So that's kind of the three avenues that you potentially have. But moving forward, I do think working with MMA to try to figure out how we draft up, if the request is the study, figure out, the parameters to it, who, if you have in the study and a commission, who you actually put on that board, because that means a whole heck of a lot of difference as to who's there. But that's probably the first steps, I would think.
Yeah, I definitely think the MMA would be someone you should reach out to. There's one thing, and I'm sorry if I missed it. Did you mention the home rule?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so the home rule, if you pass something in home rule, which means you vote on it here, as you know, then you get it passed at town meeting. So if you were to, and I'm not saying we could get it passed, but if you were to do a home rule requesting a study, that's something we could file in the legislature. I don't think it's going to receive a lot of support, because as far as I know, this would probably be the first type of legislation to even look at studying 2.5. So that's always another option you can do. You could go through the town meeting process and then send us something.
I'll also jump in on that too. If any bill's filed, if we had the bill that you're talking about and we file it tomorrow, it's called a late file. So it's not guaranteed a public hearing at all. And there's no real guarantee that it gets out of the rules committee. We can fight like heck to try to get it out, but if for some reason they don't want it out, whether it's a difficult political football or anything in between, they wouldn't release it. In the beginning of a legislative session, there's like a 2 or 3 week window where whatever bill you file, huge bill, small bill, big bill, whatever it is, if you file it, it's seasonably filed and you're guaranteed a public hearing within that 2-year session. So that's something for you to keep in mind. If you do bring this to the voters in Grafton and you go through a town meeting, once we have, the notarized copy, we can file it. Or if you wanted to, we'd have the notarized copies, just say we did it in October. We'd have it, we could either try to file it this year, we could hold on to it, and then once the next session begins, so you're guaranteed the hearing, we could do it then too. So we're throwing a lot on the wall here, but hopefully some of this sticks, and we're trying to tell you kind of all your options.
Well, and just one more, and again, where we're throwing things out there, this is kind of thinking out of the box type of thing. If you were to do a home rule that went through town meeting, and then obviously went to us, trying to exempt Grafton from Prop 2.5, because home rules can exempt municipalities from those. Now, that is something that you could file also. You could pass, send to us. Again, I'm not even sure whether the House clerk and the Senate clerk would deem it constitutional, because of the whole. I'm just going to say, one, because of the referendum. 2, because of the way the Chapter 70 and other type of formulas are all looked at communities. You could always try that option also. But there's different options. I just don't know whether some of them will even be able to pass muster at the State House as being constitutional, trying to get around this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think the home rule or the ballot initiative is the way to go on this. I think that we need to rally the troops or, you know, talk to other cities and towns, because other cities and towns may say, hey, no, we're fine with Proposition 2.5, we don't have an issue with it. But, you know, if 300 municipalities say, hey, this, you know, this could help us, we'll go along with you. I think that's the way to go. And get a bunch of cities and towns to go along with us. And I'm not saying that we need to change Proposition 2.5. I just think it's old enough that we need to look at it to find out what we can do to stop overrides. And, you know, debt exclusions in the original bill in 1980 was debt exclusions were really put in place for emergency issues. And cities and towns took that and built libraries and built fire stations and built police stations, which weren't emergency issues. But you kind of go around the corner a little bit and you use that law to work it the way you want. On the other end, on the override end, you can't really work it so that it works to your advantage. So
Yeah, I would definitely suggest that your first stop, if you haven't done it already, is reach out to MMA, because they'll have a better grasp on what municipalities actually think about it, you know? And they'd probably be your one of your strongest advocates if 351 cities and towns, the vast majority do want
Except
some
for
form of
Westbrook.
change. What's that?
Except for Westbrook.
Except Westbrook.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Colleen.
Senator Moore, you mentioned that another community had discussed this with you. Which community?
I had two selectmen from the town of Shrewsbury about 4 years ago.
Perfect. It's a good start. Go there.
Right, so it sounds to me like, you know, I appreciate you giving us the lay of the land and just the process in which to go for. I want to come out here and say, like, someone who was part of the Chapter 70 revamping process, I mean, that took years to go through. It took years to do the study, but it did not just happen with a, hey, let's invite our senator and representative to a local meeting and, hey, let's do this, sounds like a great idea, yeah, I'll get it done for you tomorrow. It took, like, to your point, I can tell you the amount of meetings, the amount of information that was shared, the amount of data that was gathered was monumental, because it looked at a formula and a structure about how to divvy up funding from the state level to local communities for school. Now I know that, you know, our 2.5 is more of our own property tax, and that's the primer that the state has allowed us to tax no more than or up to that limit. But I would, I would, let me finish real quick. Mike. I feel that having more information from like an MMA who's going to have that data, who's going to have a lot of information, is something that we should be seeking as ourselves as a board now that we have a process in which to go about it. And then I agree, because the only way we got Chapter 70 really evaluated is through a similar organization called MASC. So that was the lobby arm for all the school districts within the Commonwealth that reached out to all of you on numerous occasions and talked to you about that. So anyway.
The other thing I was going to say was the as Rep Meridian talked about when the original 2.5 was written. You know, again, the legislature doesn't write the referendums. It's written by the advocates. So when you're looking at how the funding all takes place, right now we're geared on the back of the property tax. That's something that if you're going to look at 2.5, if getting it off of the property tax, the back of the property taxes of your residents, you've now got to find a different vehicle or a revenue source to do that. So just however you go, if you're going to go forward with this, if you're going to move forward with this with the MMA, it's finding, and I'm just going by this resolution. You know, is it a local income tax? Is it a local sales tax? Is it a local something that you're going to use to make up for that? So this is where, again, it really would be up to the boards of selectmen and the MMA to really develop the language and find the funding source if you wanted to get away from the property tax. And the other thing too is, which you had mentioned, and again, comparing the Chapter 70 to this, Chapter 70, the school funding formula was established by a court case. So originally, having the legislature go back and study this is something that was a court decision that the legislature in the early 90s had to implement, and now we were just going back revisiting this. Again, this the 2.5, which we talked about, was a citizen petition-driven initiative. So there's a little difference when you're talking about trying to set up the commission to study it.
Yeah, because
So-
one is a civil right, to your point. You know what I mean? And that's where I believe is the city of Brockton sued the Commonwealth of Massachusetts back in the 90s, and that's what stemmed all of Chapter
Right.
70 today. So yeah, go ahead.
If I could just pivot a little bit, the state is in a really unique opportunity because we have a ton of money that's come from the feds. So I do think that with how we divvy up the ARPA money, more than the 5.5 million that Grafton's already received, I think there will be more that comes down. It's probably going to be formula driven, and it remains to be seen what that formula actually is. But there should be more coming down, and I would just urge that if we do have it, to your point of we don't want to do the overrides, well, this is a good opportunity to look at maybe some of those capital projects or one-time things where, it's not a recurring, and all of a sudden you don't have a revenue stream the next year because you had this money come in. But looking at a recurring revenue stream, the House did pass sports wagering, and that's projected to bring in somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 to $70 million a year for the Commonwealth. And in there, the breakdown of where the funding goes is 40% to the Workforce Investment Trust Fund, 33% to the Gaming Local Aid Fund that we put in the bill, 20% to a Youth Development and Achievement Fund, 6% to the Public Health Trust Fund, and 1% to the Players Benevolence Fund. The bill now sits with our friends in the Senate, and it's been said that there is an appetite to get it done, so I really hope that we can get it over the finish line. And I will say this, the local aid portion of that started at 30%. And I'm not saying the 3% jump is a big thing to put into a bill, but we fought like hell to get it in there, and we were successful in getting an amendment in the House to get it up to the 33%. So those are real dollars that our communities are going to feel. They absolutely are. So that's at least a revenue stream that that's potentially out there.
All right. Does anyone have any other questions? Or we move on to the
I just
next
want to
part?
say, that we're not here, and you're not here because we want to raise taxes. We want to pay the bills. So however that works out, I mean, I believe in getting rid of the overrides, and if we didn't have to do them, that'd be great. And we could stay within Proposition 2.5, but we do not want to raise taxes.
No, I appreciate the ongoing conversation. I know Mike and I talk about all of our towns all the time, and I mean, you guys know we're super accessible. So this conversation, while it's in its infancy now, is certainly going to continue.
We have no issue discussing it.
Yeah,
you
without a doubt.
we're just trying to, if you go back, there's just a lot of factors. There's the process, then there's the political factors, which I think the biggest factor there is it's a referendum. And there's a lot of, and I know since being in the legislature, there's a lot of hesitation to go against the will of the voters in something. You may see, like when a referendum's passed, you may see us tweak it a little bit, but very seldom you're going to see us not enact it. Matter of fact, the entire time that I've been in the legislature, any time we've had a referendum pass, the legislature has followed through and it has enacted the referendum. We may have made small changes, but it's been passed.
All right. Well, I know there was another part here that was added late, but it is kind of germane to the discussion on revenues and so on and so forth and the state process. And one of them was over about a year and a half ago. We had discussed as a board about a resolution in looking at a local income tax option. Part of the discussion was just the inequity of local taxes being raised by the property values was causing the affordability of homes in the community to be unobtainable or unsustainable for people who end up going on fixed income or can't attain a job that could cover not only a mortgage but the taxes as they're going up.
Or they retire.
Yeah, a fixed income. So with the option of looking at people who might have different wealth instead of in property, that part of what we were looking at, and this goes back to, you brought this up to me the other day, we had this discussion prior to COVID, and COVID happened, but we never really took any further initiative. So I wanted to at least bring it forward tonight for the board and you guys to also hear this too, because this was something that we were going to follow up with you on anyways. So I feel this is just some history about where this had come from. We had at least 2 discussions, Colleen.
Yeah, it was 2 discussions. So the former town administrator said they had even reached out to representatives. I'm not sure if it was either one of you, and they kind of suggested to do the home rule petition to put this forward. They had experience in another state. This happens in at least 13 other states, I believe. It doesn't happen here. He also suggested that it wasn't really something that had been discussed in Massachusetts just yet. The board was in unanimous support back in March 2020, and they discussed it in the beginning of March. March 17th, they were going to vote on it, but the world was shutting down. So it never really made it back on an agenda officially, but it has been discussed several times since then. But there was just a lot of support for it to just start to get the process happening, to just be in conjunction with 2.5 rather than just relying on 2.5, as we kind of all just covered. But even then, it was going to be a multi-year process to even see if it would gain traction. And, any thoughts or support that you guys have for this would be welcomed.
Peter and I spoke today, and also Rep. Meridian, and we were talking that, and I did mention that, I'm not sure if it's filed this year, but the past couple legislative sessions, it's either Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket, tried to do a home rule. Well, they passed the home rule, then they tried the legislative to get it passed in the legislature, allowing for a surcharge on deeds within their confines, their property, town, and it's never gone anywhere. The only other legislation I know of similar to this, and I think it's either Senator Hines or Senator Lesser, has filed legislation to allow communities within a region to implement a local tax that would be dedicated to transportation funding. And that hasn't gone anywhere. So those are the only 2 initiatives that I know of. And again, there may have been other ones that have been filed, but those are the only 2 that I know of that in the Senate that we kind of saw, but didn't really gain any traction.
Third time's a charm. So I'm hearing.
And I'll also just follow up. I very briefly was able to search the Mass Legislature website, and if you just type in income tax, there's 336 results. So it's all different things. I mean, there's exempting, active military and this and that, but there are ones that look at Part B, taxable income, bringing it to 5.3%, bringing it to 6%. So that kind of speaks to a bit of the resolution. These are refiled bills. They haven't moved prior. But listen, that's not to say that they're not going to. I mean, out of 6,000 or 7,000 bills filed every session, about 350, 400 get signed into law. And the system's set up to actually make it more difficult, which is a good thing. You don't want a ton of bills just flying around willy-nilly, but that just shows you what you're up against for any bill, not just what we're talking about, but for anything out there. Even things like a little bridge renaming or something like that sometimes takes months and months and months to do. So that's just a little snapshot, but yeah, there's a ton that is out there dealing with everything about the income tax issue, but not a ton's really moved on it.
I personally don't disagree with the concept that you're trying to do, giving a local municipality the option of instituting a tax at the local level, as long as it goes through town meeting, the Board of Selectmen and town meeting, and gets support from the community. I don't have a real issue with that, because I think to me, that speaks to what Massachusetts have. It's local control. It's seeking the input of the local community and the taxpayers. And if they approve it, if they want to make that additional investment, they should have the right to make it. If they don't want to, then obviously they don't vote for it. But I think similar to what we had said with 2.5, if you really want to mount a strong advocacy for this type of initiative, it's getting the M&A and getting them on board with either the 2.5 revision study or this, to try to get the legislature so all our colleagues are getting calls from the selectmen in their local communities, so that there's some sort of political pressure put on them, so that there's some sort of action, because right now there's not.
And I'll just follow up real quick. We do have the pending piece of legislation for FinCom, and the number one thing that the chair of third reading came over to me with, and she said, Dave, do you have the local approval? I said, yep. And she goes, and we couldn't even give her a scanned copy of it. She needed the hard copy notarized from the town that the town wanted that. So anything that we're looking at, and we keep saying the home rule petition, that's probably the best way to go, because then it's proof. It made it through a town meeting. The town voted on it. And then, we're going to try to usher it through.
Does anyone have any other questions for Mr. Meridian and Mr. Moore tonight? Doreen? You have anything?
So,
I don't, but I just want to thank both of you for coming in front of the board this evening. I wish I was there in person to say hello, but I really appreciate your feedback. I think MMA is a great approach if the board, determines that this is something we want to move forward. We're not even, necessarily in full consensus of what direction we want to take any of this in yet. This is more information gathering, and the discussions we've had was, you two would be the best people to ask about process and moving forward. And we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Did you have anything?
yeah, just quickly, so if the, that local gaming fund were to come to fruition, what would that look like in terms of, how would that get to Grafton, and would that be additional Chapter 70, Chapter 90? Would it be its own fund?
It would be its own fund, very similar to Chapter 70. They'll be formula based, and it'll just get dispersed that way. But yeah, out of the revenue that we get, 33% going to that dedicated fund, we'll start to add up. It certainly will. And so part of the bill as well, the Commonwealth gets every year that someone goes and tries to apply for a license. It's a $5 million fee. And then after 5 years, you have to re-up for that. So that's continuing revenue that's going to be generated. Never mind the actual gaming piece of it all. So I think the number can actually be higher than the 60 to 70 million, because what you're trying to do is get all of the offshore accounts and the gambling that goes on in the shadows to actually be legalized, and the state will partner with, the DraftKings and the FanDuel and everyone else who does have a good credible standing and obviously has the capital to do the $5 million fee.
Got it. Okay.
Now, just so you know, we have, many of us have asked Senate leadership when we're going to do this. We haven't got a time. They have said that they are looking to do this. And the way it works is the bill that the Senate puts out, and it would be the same way if we had done it first and then the House would do it. The Senate version will be different from the House version. So even after we pass it, they make the bills different than they bargain out the priorities in the conference committee. So I'm hoping that we will have the bill done before we break for Thanksgiving. So,
And I hope the two of you are on the conference committee together.
Well,
great.
I'm the ranking member on Echo Dev, so I will be on the conference committee, so that's a great thing, but.
Okay.
So, we would definitely welcome any additional revenue coming from the state. It's not just 2.5 in that tax cap that we have here locally. It's also, if you look at the percentage of our budget that comes from the state every year, it's been dropping pretty steadily year after year. So it's putting more burden on the local tax revenue in terms of funding the overall budget year after year. So if we can reverse or stop that kind of trend in terms of our funding our services here locally, that would definitely be more than welcome.
Absolutely. I know I'm sure Mike does too, but I know we keep in constant contact with Evan about grants that are out there.
Yep.
Any dollars that we can get back to this town, we'll certainly fight for.
And I think it's important to note that, before anything that this board takes, on behalf of this town, there'll be ample opportunity for public input, obviously, prior to a town meeting. And, if we ever get to that point, or whenever that is, we'll be sure to let the community know what that format would look like. And obviously, we would invite you all there too, to hear it firsthand, if it gets to anything beyond our discussion tonight, after hearing of what you guys have said. And, I think, again, I'm going to reach out to MMA myself and say, give me the history on this, give me the history on that. I'm sure we're not the only one, to your point, Mr. Moore, that has had this discussion. So it would be great to learn as much information as possible to just see what other ideas have been floated out there and see how they ended up and why.
and again, I'm just going to mention, when you reach out to other communities, don't be surprised if you get a cold shoulder. Because when I did that, I never expected the reaction I got when I filed that legislation for the overlays to exempt that. I was taken back by the sentiment of people thinking how they really wanted to hold on to 2.5.
I think the old saying goes, best laid plans.
Yeah.
All right, does anybody have any other questions? I want to thank you guys for coming out tonight.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate the time, and always seeing you in person, even remotely, is great too, but
Maybe next time we go to Mass.
let's hope
Nice.
Yes.
we're getting there. Well, anyway, thank you very much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
All
gents.
right. All right, so we've already taken care of the one-day beer and wine license for
Thank you,
Tufts. Good to see you, David. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good to see you as always.
Taking the elbows.
You do elbows.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you.
Matt.
So next up on our agenda tonight is the one-day beer and wine license for Sunflower Shanty. I believe we have Tom Keene from Sunflower that is here with us tonight to answer any questions and go over the request. I'm going to go ahead and welcome Tom to the meeting. Tom, can you hear us?
Tom is here. He's connecting to audio.
Okay,
So
we'll just
just
give
one
him a
moment.
minute. Yep.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Tom. Good evening. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Thank you for your patience. So you have an application for tonight for a one-day beer and wine license?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Before we get to any motions or anything, does the board have any questions for Tom? All right. Okay, at this point, if there's no questions, I could entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to approve the one-day beer and wine licenses for the Sunflower Shanty LLC for the following dates: October 2, 3, 6, 8, 9, 10, 13, 15, 16, 17, 20, 22, 23, 24, 27, 29, 30, and 31, 2021.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded for the multiple days for one-day beer and wine license. Any discussion on this motion? I just want to make one comment. I would like to, I know we've talked about this, but work on some sort of permanent structure for them, I know, for next season. I know that probably is something we should be looking into, but, you know, I'm okay with supporting, local businesses and the growth, but I would like to see something more permanently structured for this going forward, in my opinion.
Okay.
Okay. All right, any other further discussion on the one-day beer and wine license for Sunflower Shanty? All right, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? I declare the motion carried. Tom, thank you very much for coming out tonight.
No problem. Thank you
Have
so
any
much.
questions for you?
Appreciate
All
it.
right, we'll see
Get
you.
the support.
Bye.
Thanks.
All right, so next up here on our agenda, we have application review for Section 11 Priority Development Site Overlay District, which is that development located at 244 Worcester Street. So for people who are following along, that is the property that is in front of Wyman Gordon. So tonight, I know we have Mr. McGoldrick here from the planning office to just go over the process for this type of permitting process. And I'm just going to turn this over to both Chris and Evan.
I'm gonna turn it over to Chris.
Chris, I'm gonna just tweak that mic toward you. There you go.
Thank you. So as we've discussed before, the 43D process, comes before the select board. We were reviewing for application completeness. What that does after this is it goes to hearings for conservation, zoning board of appeals, and planning board. We did receive notification from each of those boards that they did receive complete applications. We've actually started some of the public hearings tonight. Conservation Commission is hearing this application. So we did receive all the materials needed for advertising. So at this point, we'll be moving through that process. The select board's role in this case is in terms of overseeing the 180-day deadline to approve. So what that entails is that depending upon how the board wishes to proceed, they can issue a letter which then starts that 180-day clock for the review period. The boards would then have to render their decisions within that 180-day deadline, the select board would issue a letter stating that all the boards have rendered their decisions and the processing is complete, and that would be the project for moving forward. If they don't wish to issue that letter, they can allow that time period to lapse, the 20-day time period. I'm sorry, I have to look at the actual date from the resubmission of materials, but that after that date lapses, that starts the 180-day deadline. In this case, I feel pretty confident that most of the boards will be able to, having received the full applications, will be able to meet that 180-day deadline. Typically under our regular permitting, we do hit that deadline anyways. So it's an extra step to a normal process, but I think it's good to have the select board involved in terms of projects of these scale and nature. So I know that the applicants are presenting to the Conservation Commission tonight, which as they're rendering a decision and reviewing a lot of the material, we felt that that was probably more important for them to attend. If the select board would like to invite them to present at one of their meetings as well, we could definitely reach out and have that arranged. I'm sure they would be willing to present to the select board as well.
Thank you, Mr. McGoldrick. Just for the community's awareness, the first meeting being held in discussion of 244 Worcester Street is actually tonight starting at 8:15 p.m. and that'll be the Conservation Commission. Followed by the Planning Board will have their public hearing on or about September 27, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. Followed by the ZBA Zoning Board of Appeals, and they are scheduled to have their meeting and discussion on or about September 30th of 2021. So for those people who are following along with this that I know that wanted to voice their input, there are 3 board meetings for you to do so. One is tonight, I believe one is next week, and one is on September 30th. So please, for those that want to be heard regarding these permitting processes for 244 Worcester Street, please attend those meetings, and they will welcome public input and comment. They're all open to the public. Public hearings are for the public to actually voice their comments for their record. All right, does anybody have any questions for Mr. McGoldrick on this process? I just wanted to make sure we advertise those dates out there and we do that as much as possible, because I know there's been a lot of chatter lately on that. No? Okay, so I think at this point you're asking for us to, we can go ahead and take a motion to send a letter off?
Yeah, it's the board's discretion, but if they'd like to issue a letter stating that all the materials have been received, that would then, upon issuing that, starts the 180
Starts the 180 day clock. So I think we're at that point now, unless anyone has a different point of view.
Nope.
Okay, I can entertain a motion at this point.
I move the board vote to authorize the town planner to write a letter on the board's behalf indicating the 244 Worcester Street petitions and applications are complete.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussions on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I declare the motion carried unanimous. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that input and that update and all the work you're doing on that process. All right. Do we need you for anything else?
No, I don't think so.
You're free to go, Chris. Unless you want to hang, that's fine with me. So, but you're more than welcome to stick around if you'd like. if there's
Thank you.
anything.
I'll take off, but I appreciate the invitation.
Okay.
Love to stay, but I'm not going to.
All right. So there was an over-under about 8:30 that we would get to that part of the agenda, but you made it under the wire.
He's going to the
I appreciate it.
8:15 meeting. He's got
He's going
he's got something else to do.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chris.
So next up, we have a road closure update. So it was notified to me that originally there was a plan to close the road around the common for October 2nd for the Gazebo Palooza, but due to some limitations and some utilities that won't be available for that event, they want to move this to the Jordan Boulevard area. So in front of us tonight, we have a change in the road closure. So instead of that area in front of the Congregational Church, all the way down to the part of Millbury Street, they now want to move that road closure to behind 1 Grafton Common on Jordan Boulevard. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a quick question. That was part of the conversation back when they came the first time, and Jordan Boulevard was a consideration. And I thought the chief of police had a concern because he didn't want people kind of wandering so much. So does that mean all of the activity will now be on Jordan Boulevard? There won't be as much wandering and street crossing, or?
So I do know the way that Joanne had mentioned it to me is that they're moving a lot of their events and everything onto Jordan Boulevard. So they're basically picking up shop, and the center of those events will be there instead of on the common.
Okay.
On the area.
But so the chief is okay with this? 'Cause I know he had hesitation, and that's how we ended on the location we did the first time.
Yeah, I didn't get any feedback from the chief, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't think of to ask the chief.
Okay.
My bad.
Okay. Does anybody know? Nobody knows?
No, I don't, but I don't think there were major concerns. I think they can be addressed with just how the event is organized.
Okay.
And we are providing sawhorses and cones and barrels and stuff. So, to help mitigate some of the risk.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions or comments? I think that's a good reminder as a process from now on when there's ever road closure, just make sure we have a checklist of, people who originally gave us feedback, right? Okay. All right, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to approve the closure of Jordan Boulevard on October 2nd, 2021.
Second.
I have a motion to close Jordan Boulevard, seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, moving on to resignations for town treasurer collector. Do I have a motion?
I move the board vote to accept the resignation of Amy Perkins as the town of Grafton treasurer collector effective October 22nd, 2021.
Second.
Motion made second. Any discussion on the motion? I just have one question. Do you have an anticipation of when you might feel that you'll have that position refilled?
So if you look around the Commonwealth, there are many treasurer collector positions that are open right now because nobody is certified to do the work. So I think it's going to be a challenge. In the meantime, we have lined up a consultant to start that is going to overlap with Amy to give us some support. We will be posting that position by the end of the week. Fingers crossed we get a good candidate, but it's definitely a struggle throughout Massachusetts right now to fill that position.
How difficult is that to get certified for?
I believe it's a 6-year process.
Okay.
And a town the size of Grafton, you really can't mess around with it. So we're gonna try to find a fully certified candidate that can do it. If not, we're gonna be looking at other options as well, whether that's a hybrid of consulting and somebody that we're moving up or moving through the ranks, or
Yep.
they're an assistant somewhere else and they're close to being where they need to be, and we're gonna mentor them up. We're gonna look at all of those things, but a lot of our communities in the local area have had openings for months and months.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you. Any other further questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, so do we have no appointments tonight for select board? We don't have any appointments tonight for town administrators, so new business. So before us tonight, we have the Stowe Road Culvert contract. Mr. Broussard, do you want to give us just a basic review? I know this is just for some of the work that's been done up there over at Misco Brook.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. This is just, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get the contract up in front of me here. So we are looking to ask the board to to approve a contract with Aqualine. They're the ones that we are also doing the sidewalk project with up on Milford Road, right? I always say Milbury when I mean Milford.
It's Milford.
Okay, good. And we're asking that the contract be approved not to exceed $536,790. The Stowe Road culvert, I believe, is what would be classified as a small It's like small bridge, large culvert project. Hence why it's only $500,000.
Okay. And what's the funding source for this?
This, I believe, is. Hold on for 1 sec. I apologize. This, I believe, is a Chapter 90 project.
This is, okay. Does anyone have any further questions? All right, hearing none, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to approve the contract with Aqualon Utility in the amount not to exceed $536,790 for the replacement of the Stowe Road culvert.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimous. All right, thank you. So next up, I have a VHB Stormwater Contract.
Yeah, so this is part of the MS4 stormwater program that is a federal requirement, and this is just us re-upping with VHB to give us compliance support. So basically they go measure outfalls, volumes, any problems we may have, wet areas, things like that. And that contract is $99,600.
Does anyone have any questions? Hearing none, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to authorize the chairman to sign the VHB Grafton fiscal year 2022 MS4 compliance support contract in the amount of $99,600.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare motion carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, so next up today, we have a policy review in front of us. And if I'm not mistaken, there's one that's not, we're gonna pass over tonight, and I believe that's the,
Only in the interest of time. So if you want to, if
I think we're doing good on time. We're at
Okay.
8:12, so we're
Yep, I agree.
cruising right along.
I am shocked, to be quite honest with you. I thought it would
Why?
we
We're
get to
super
here at
efficient.
9:30.
We're good.
Well, I'm just saying it moved along much faster than I thought it would. So I think we can tackle both if you'd like.
See, someone owes me some money, because I had the over-under tonight, so.
I would have
I'm just
definitely
kidding.
lost my shirt on this one.
All
made
right,
you
let's
think
go
of
ahead
that
and cover, let's cover both then tonight. Then let's start with the social media use policy.
Okay. So we, as we mentioned at the last meeting, decided to tackle the social media policy and pretty much tear it down to the studs and rewrite it and examine what other communities are doing, what we need to be doing better, and we've come up with this 3-page policy that is before you now. So the general purpose of the policy is fairly straightforward: to ensure that the official town social media accounts are used properly and pretty much are only used for things that the town should be using it for. We made sure that we included applicability, so even if somebody is a temporary, per diem, or independent contractor, if somehow they have access to our official social media accounts, the policy will apply to them too, so they know what they can and cannot do. It outlines the general requirements for an official Town of Grafton social media account. It outlines what the town accounts can be used for, what the town is responsible for, and it delves deeper into department-specific pages. There are quite a few departments in the town of Grafton that have their own recreation, Grafton PD, the planning department, all have different levels of active pages, but all of them are used. It outlines the primary uses for all of these pages by employees and by departments in general. Outlines the procedures that are necessary for somebody to have access to these pages, so we ensure that only authorized individuals are able to get on and post things. Finally, covers monitoring and what can and cannot be posted in greater detail. And finally, records management. That's a big thing. That's one of the first things that Evan and I tackled when we came on board, is we set up Archive Social with all of our social media pages. So what that does is it takes a live record of everything that was posted to our pages by us or by others, keeps a complete and total record of it, so that way even if we delete something or a resident deletes something, we still have that, and it's in the policy and plan language that any official town page needs to be linked to that, so that way we can make use of that resource.
Okay. Any questions?
The only question I have is a lot of us set up our own select board pages, especially when it's campaign season. That is not an official town website or correct?
Correct, and we discussed that at length, just to make sure that the policy didn't contradict itself.
Yep.
But, a Colleen Roy for Select Board Facebook page wouldn't fall under the four walls of this policy.
Perfect.
I have a follow-up question to that. So that is like a campaign for, but what about a page that says Peter Carlson Grafton Select Board? That's not a campaign site. That's just a site, but it's got Town of Grafton in it. I'm an official here in the Town of Grafton. Does this policy apply to me in that aspect?
Can I answer that? Because the way I interpreted it, it is no. That there is language in there that makes it what you have to do on your site to be considered official, and if you're not doing those things, you are not official.
Oh.
So it depends. So if Peter Carlson Selectman Town of Grafton is posting official information from the government to the public, then I would say yes, it is. However, being an elected official puts that into a little bit more of a gray area because you are a politician and not, on the bureaucratic side of the house. So what I would think would happen if we came into a situation like that is that since you are creating a public record with the information you're putting out, you would be subject to having to have Archive Social monitor and retain that data. However, the limitations elsewhere in the policy would not take effect.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my reading of that.
Okay.
And if we did
I would just
Colleen
don't-
Roy
just-
for
just-
select
just
board
don't do it.
unofficial.
Just don't do it. Just stop doing it. No, just kidding.
But unofficial, right? If I tack that on there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some nuance that we would have to tackle. I mean, this is kind of a broad paintbrush.
Mhm.
I think there's room for nuance that we would have to tackle on the eaches. But yes, if you had unofficial and you were using it as like a blog, and there was some way to signify to the public that this is not official business, then I think that's different. Like when you say, Colleen Roy, candidate for selectwoman, or whatever. You're identifying yourself as a politician that is running for a public office, and you're going to post opinion in this and that. But, Peter Carlson, chair select board, Town of Grafton, that's pushing out meeting things and videos from our official site and all blah 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 blah, as just an information run page, I think reads and feels differently.
Okay.
So I think we would have to, vet that on the eaches.
So if there's some language that we need to put in, or that way to sort of identify that we're representing ourselves as individuals as opposed to representatives of the town, I think Colleen and I both regularly, and a lot of people in town who have been on the board have we do distribute information. We share, reshare information that's coming out from the town and whatnot. I definitely want to continue to do that because I just feel like it's another way for us to reach out to people, to get them engaged and provide information.
Yeah.
For me, I guess, my account is also attached to my personal email account. And so I guess I'm not on board with my personal email account and personal Facebook activity to be archived in the process. But my select board account, I'm fine with that. So I've done a little bit of research into this, Colleen. There is a way that you can create a new Facebook profile and then have that own the page. So you can transfer that over to another account so that it's distinct and completely separate from your personal. And I think that's kind of the direction that I'm going to go in. So
I think there is some literature or some information from Archive Social that would be helpful in that situation, because I think there is a way to partition it so that it.
So when you link an account to Archive Social, it asks you which pages and profiles you want to link.
Yep.
So if we had them send the link to tether the accounts to your personal email, it would give you the option. Do you want to tether Matt Opton Board of Selectmen, Matt Opton Personal, and any other pages you might be an admin or moderator on? And all you have to do is just pick the select board one, and that's all it will look at.
Okay.
It won't look at anything else.
So let's test that out, and I'm happy to do that and move forward with it. And I just want to see what it's actually archiving once we put it in play. I'm fine with that. There's nothing that I have to not want to archive, but I just want to make sure that it's just archiving the information that's distinct to my select board profile and nothing else really. So
Yep, absolutely.
That's cool.
So, for example, the Town of Grafton page is linked to my personal account, and it's only archive. I mean, it's not archiving any of my stuff.
Got it. Okay.
Not that I do anything, but
Sure.
Yeah, I'm personally not opposed to, now that I've seen the policy and what it's collecting, and I did some research on the archive social, personally, I'm fine with inputting mine, because it does say Town of Grafton Select Board member, and, to the point, I've been very hesitant of posting anything on there. I'm waiting to kind of see how this all played out, because I know this is something we've been talking about for a while, so. Personally, I'm fine with it on mine, and I would like to start using it again, for information purposes, but, if we have a policy and guidelines around how that will be used, then great, I've got the framework in which to work in, so I'm happy about that. So, does anyone else have any questions on the policy? You don't have to worry about me. Oh, I don't know, I've heard.
You got a Facebook page. I've seen it. It's real.
Well, you know what?
real.
I've never seen it. So. Doreen, do you have any questions or anything on this?
I don't, but I'm glad we had that discussion. I think it was important. So thank you. I have nothing to add.
All right. Okay, at this point, I can entertain a motion if the board is ready to adopt it.
so
Okay.
moving forward, can we do these votes by roll call?
On what votes? On policies?
Because Doreen's.
Because we have remote
'cause-
participation.
Yes.
No, you only have to do that if the majority is meeting remote participation, because she's like participating remote as one person. So we have adopted that where we've had people call in. We've never had to do, the roll call was
We
not.
did when I was.
I always thought
We
people
did.
calling in dictated that the board had to do roll calls.
Yep.
If someone called in on the telephone, they always did roll calls. I
Why
thought.
didn't anyone correct me earlier when I said that?
But then you shut me down.
I didn't shut you down. I just mentioned it, and no one else like.
Okay, you didn't listen.
I did listen. I just said, look, I'm not doing it. No one said the wiser. So I'm
I
sorry.
tried, but you're the chair, so I just.
Oh, man, we all did.
All right, take your shots. Come on, I'm right here.
I think just.
Come on, Jen. Put it right here. There you go. Thank you.
All right.
Okay,
well,
got
we,
it.
We know better now. Let's. do
Okay,
Alright,
so
moving.
at this point, we will move forward. Everything will be roll call votes, period. There. While we have remote participation. Okay, at this point, I can entertain a motion.
All right, let's practice this. I move the board vote to approve the social media policy as written.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
Does it have to be a roll call?
I'm gonna get this right, okay? All right, I'm gonna get this right now, all right? All right, hearing none. All those by roll call vote when I call your name, please. Ms. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Mead,
Mead eye.
Mr. Often,
Off and I.
Miss Roy,
Roy, I.
Carlson, I declare the motion carried unanimous. There you go. There we go. That was that. Did I nail
Well
it?
done.
Okay.
That's
Good.
excellent.
I always want to crush it.
A little late, but you got there.
Evan would have won the time bet if we had done that from the beginning, though. We would have definitely been on
Here we
9:30.
go. Here we go.
That's what I wasn't
what
even.
you
I wasn't
factored for
catching
the
it. I'm
roll
like,
call.
why are we so far ahead of schedule?
Yeah.
That's it.
I
You're
had
taking a
planned
short-
for roll call.
Okay. So next up, we have the computer information and resources policy. Does anyone have any questions on this? Or do you want to give an overview?
So this is the same policy that we talked about at the previous meeting. We did make one addition on page 3, specifying how the decision to monitor uses of computer resources would be made per your request. So it states that the decision to monitor will be made by the town administrator in consultation with the human resources director and town council.
Perfect.
The town administrator is the human resources director.
Shh.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Come
Was
on,
I not supposed to say that? Sorry. So have a meeting.
Yeah.
Any questions? No? Okay.
I know you did a lot of fixing and formatting here. Thank you very much for that, William. All right, hearing none, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to approve the computer information and resources policy as written.
Second.
Motion made second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those by roll call, please, when I call your name. Ms. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Mead?
Mead eye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Mr. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Carlson, I declare the motion carried unanimous. Thank you.
Nice job.
All right, that's 2 in a row, guys. I'm on a streak. Okay, so next up here, this was part the town administrator 6-month evaluation. I just wanted to report that I have put all of this together. I want to thank every one of us who participated and got this into me at the end of August. What I have done is basically have copied every single one of your forms and put them into this printed document here for you to review tonight. So basically, it was just taking your results, tabulating them up based out of a score out of 100, and essentially putting them in order. And then on the last page, I provided a nice little Excel sheet that just goes through each one of our scores and tabulated so you can see the total score. So before I go into just some of the components of this evaluation, does anyone have any question on the format and the way that this is laid out tonight?
I just want to say that, you can see my scores. I look at this as very informal, and I didn't think it was going to be as formal as this. But a 5 in my opinion is constantly exceeds, and that's why you don't see any 5s on mine at all. And I'm not criticizing the other members of the board, but I've done evaluations for years, and constantly exceeds, sometimes exceeds, meets expectations. That's how I evaluate people. So I just wanted to say that because I have the lowest score on there, and I wanted to explain it.
Thank you. All right. Does anyone else have any questions on the format and just the layout? And we can go into what was summarized. All right. In no particular order, just to kind of outline everyone, there were 20 questions on the evaluation sheet that was sent out to each one of the members over the course of several weeks. Each one of the members evaluated Mr. Brassard on his performance in an informal way on the first 180 days while he was here working as our new town administrator. Out of the 20 questions, each one was ranked on a numeric scale of 1 to 5. 5 being outstanding, 1 needing essentially representing extremely poor performance. For the record, no one scored anything below a 3 here. Okay, so in my estimation, Mr. Brassard, has met with satisfaction or greater, based on these 20 questions that we were evaluating on in those first 180 days. So I will go down the list here and just read to you just how each one of the members scored and tallied. So this is based out of a score of a possible 100 being the highest, 0 being the lowest. Myself, I scored Mr. Brassard with a 98 out of a possible 100. Mr. Fazio scored Mr. Brassard as a 94 out of a possible 100. Mr. Mead has scored Mr. Brassard as a 73 out of a possible 100. Mr. Often scored a 90 out of a possible 100. And Ms. Roy had scored a 98 out of a possible 100. So I just provided on that last sheet there just all those tabulations based on your scores. And if you were to take the average over all 5 of us, it came out to a 90.6 out of a possible 100. I will say that the feedback that each member had provided, I had just copied and pasted. So for full transparency purposes, I did not selectively choose people's comments one way or the other. What you're getting is the full raw data here in this form. I felt that was important not only for each board member to see how we evaluated and what we saw as, give you an example here at the end of the form. There was 3 questions that provided, a feedback via prose was just overall general comments, identified strengths, and the last one was identified weaknesses. Each one of us had provided some feedback to Mr. Brassard, and once this document is accepted by us tonight, my goal is to send it to William to have him just go through the formatting component to make sure everything all lines up so it looks nice and neat. And then that gets put into Mr. Brassard's file for his 180-day evaluation. And then that will become a public document for anybody who wishes to see it. So if there isn't any other questions, or if anyone has any
I
comments.
just
that
have a
they'd like to
question.
make.
So I wasn't involved in the beginning when Evan was first hired. In your contract, there is a 180-day evaluation that is a formal evaluation? Informal
It says
evaluation.
informal, yeah.
So an informal evaluation doesn't have to go into the record.
But it's a public document, so it has to.
Well, it
go
has
into
to,
the record.
but
That's what
it
I'm saying.
doesn't have to go into his file or whatever it
It's
is.
his feedback, so I feel that this is something that goes into that record, because when we do our annual evaluation, which I wanna have done, prior to the close of, at the end of the month in April, before general elections occur in the town, that's gonna be really the meat and potatoes, in my opinion, of,
Yeah.
where things have been over the course of a year, that now Mr. Brassard would have been here for, you arrived here
February 22nd.
22nd. So that'll be a full year. And some of the information that was provided here in his first 180 days is also going to be applicable, I feel, in his one-year evaluation. Because you've got to base it on, time served, right?
Okay, so, and I just wanna say, when we talked about this originally, I had mentioned about a very informal, and this is more formal than I expected, and that's all.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
No, I'm glad we went through this process. I do think we owed Evan our collected thoughts. We hadn't really discussed what a 5 and a 4 and a 3 means, and so I think that there is some discrepancy in terms of how individuals thought about that. But I do think this was a good process. I love the fact that that we took the unvarnished, exactly as they were submitted, evaluations from individuals, put them in the packet, and that information is going to become public. I think that's a really good process. And whether it gets filed with an HR, in the HR record or not, as long as it's known to Evan and publicly available, I think that's the important thing, is that we've got an actual documented evaluation. It was challenging for me personally because Evan's only been on board for a few months, so there were areas that it was difficult to evaluate on, and I think that will get better over time as we get, to know how things are working as we go forward. But I thought this was a really good process, so I'd like to continue something similar and even maybe a little bit more in depth, as we go forward into the future.
Any other questions or comments from the board? I do want to take a moment and thank Doreen for finding a format for me to collect all of your thoughts tonight, and the way that it was structured. I thought it was pretty straightforward and it's very simple to follow and use. I look forward to using something similar, this type of evaluation process in April. And I'm really looking forward to the next 6 months. I want to, I'm sure we'll see some outstanding achievements that we've already seen already, and it's only been a short while. So I do agree with you, Matt, that some of the questions were really difficult to give a substantive review. I didn't have a lot of comments myself, but looking at your 180-day entry plan, the first 90 days, the next 90 days that you presented to us back in the summer, I felt we really hit the ground running very, very aggressively, and we hit a lot of targets, and I know we've uncovered a lot more that we need to do. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that all comes out and plays out for us as a community, but more importantly as this functioning board with its administration. Okay, if there isn't
Peter,
any.
can I add one thing?
Doreen, yes, go ahead.
Also like the format and agree with everything everybody said. I just wanted to say well done to Evan and thank you. It's a pleasure working with you, and it was definitely difficult to evaluate someone after 180 days. It flies by. but I just well done. I think it's a great score, and I enjoy working with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
You set a high bar for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that. I was like,
Oh no.
All right, so the only thing I would like to ask tonight is to just have the board take a vote to accept the evaluation as presented, and I would like to have William to just go through it and fix the formatting at his leisure. And then if the board would like, I can sign it if everyone feels that this is indeed true representation of your comments and feedback.
Sure.
I'll take a motion.
Sure, I make a motion that we accept the town administrator 6-month evaluation as presented and authorize the chair to sign it.
Second.
Motion made second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Mead?
Mead eye.
Mr. Often?
Often I.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Carlson, I declare the motion carried unanimous. Thank you. Okay. We appreciate it. Thank you very much, everybody.
thank you.
All right, so next up here, we have select board goals. I know this was a carryover from last week. So Doreen, I'm gonna hand this over to you, if that's okay with you.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. So at our meeting last week, we briefly talked about just the logistics about setting a goals meeting for this year with, trying to make this annual, and also the fact that we have a new board member since the last time we did goals, and really structure this in a way that we sit very similar to before in like a round table type of workshop where I think it worked well last time, having the town administrator sort of mediate or facilitate the meeting. And so the purpose of this on the agenda tonight is to set a date, maybe set a different location if the board wishes to do that, and maybe come up with some sort of structure around what we're going to do, what we're going to bring to the table, what worked last year, what we want to improve on, what we want to get rid of, and that's basically it.
Okay, any questions or comments? So I was thinking, having this sooner rather than later. Our workshop is scheduled for October 12th. That's a Tuesday. Does the board have any objections on meeting on Tuesday, on the 12th, to go over goals?
Nope.
Nope.
No, except I'd like to talk about where we meet. So I thought one of our most productive meetings last year was our goal setting meeting. I thought it was a really good kind of environment for that discussion. I would like to propose that if it's open, that we do it at the library in that community room, and instead of like sitting next to each other like this, like in front of the lights and whatnot, that we do it over there, maybe in more of a round table fashion. Because to just get out of this environment so that we all have an opportunity to, kind of change things up. We can sit in different positions so that we're not in, as much as I like sitting next to you, Ray, I might want to sit next to somebody else in our goals discussion, and to just change things up a little bit, to try to promote, more open discussion. So I think if the library's open at that point, I'd like to, if it's not, then maybe we do it somewhere else, or maybe we put it off a little bit until the library is open. But I personally I think that'd be a great venue for us to meet in. So
If it's not open, I have two other suggestions. The first goals meeting was at the South Grafton Meeting House, and that worked for GCTV. They were able to record it. And then the other thing is GCTV has an awesome conference room that is not utilized as much as it could be. So I think that's a nice location as well.
sure. To me, the important thing is to sort of not be here. So yeah, the library was just one idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I like all those ideas. I think just getting out of conference room A and having a different environment for the goals meeting. And on that, I just want to add too, if we have this workshop meeting on the 12th, I would like to keep the goals meeting separate from other workshop items. So it would only be this one agenda item. So if that doesn't work, if we have other agenda items, I would rather have the goals meeting even be a different day of the week. And it's just that meeting. It's just that discussion. That's
So,
my request.
Doreen, just to share with you, so, as I put the agendas together, October was extremely light because we have town meeting the following week, right? So we're not doing a lot of substantive anything on that date. Keep in mind, we only have one meeting in October before we have town meeting. So if it's with the board's permission, if we need to take any action prior to town meeting, we may want to look at another date because we have the meeting on the 5th, the 12th, and the 19th. So we're meeting the day after town meeting. So with the board's permission, if you could send me some feedback on the week of the 11th to see if you could possibly meet, if it's necessary, on Thursday the 14th. That way, if we need that meeting to take any votes or anything prior to town meeting, we can do so. So we will have the 12th set aside for the goals. We'll look at this in the order in which it was mentioned. We'll look at the library. We'll look at cable access TV studio. I'm sorry, South Grafton Community House or cable access TV. Is there any order and preference? Does anybody have on that, or is that?
GCTV studio would be new. We went to South Grafton the first year.
Let's do that then. Let's look at either the library or the cable access studio, which those are the two newest additions. Okay. All right, we'll look at that. For logistic purposes, we'll get back to you. Okay, so we'll keep that goals workshop and discussion, just goals only, no other business. No
Great.
objections. Okay. All right, anything else on goals? Okay, moving on.
Just one more thing, and I don't know if this is a discussion for tonight, but just particularly for Ray, who's this will be his first participation in a goals meeting, just expectations walking into it, and maybe, and Evan too, and William. We have 3 people in the room who haven't been through the process with us yet, so maybe we can just put together some sort of summary. I'm happy to take that on and just kind of what the expectations are, and work with Evan and William on the format. Very similar to what we did last year with Carter. I think that worked pretty well with the flip charts. And then the first year, actually, we did the Post-it notes, remember? And we voted. So I don't know if anyone has any preference, but I feel like you sort of have to walk into the goals meeting with goals in mind.
Yep.
Maybe that's maybe that's all we need to do, but we should sort of have a plan of how we're going to structure this.
Personally,
So if there's
I would like to weigh in on it too, Dwayne. I think the way we did it last year was more productive.
Agreed.
The Post-it note was extremely informative. It had a ton of ideas, but there was really no good way to get looking for commonality or consensus in general. So it became this really big idea list that was like 40 some odd goals, and that, to me, that just seemed like it was too distracting. Last year's process, I thought, was done very well.
And it was a 2-part process. That was my favorite part, is that we did it, and then Carter kind of boiled it down and then met with department heads and then brought it back to us. I thought that was very helpful, where the first year that did not happen.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So, good question. Evan, when is so if we have a meeting on the 12th, when would be your next staff meeting?
Is the 12th a
Tuesday.
workshop?
Yes.
So it would be following the 19th. So it would be on the 20th is when I would do my department head meeting.
So we could feasibly have a goals workshop on the 12th, and then we could have a follow-up in the November workshop.
Yeah.
After the feedback and that process with department heads?
Yep.
Okay. How does that work for scheduling purposes?
Sounds lovely.
Great.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Okay. All right. So we'll set aside those 2 dates for that purpose. And if we need another meeting for whatever purpose, I'll just bring it to the board's attention and state the reason why. But I think we should be able to manage that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but we're in agreement that Evan's going to facilitate the meeting. Because I thought that that was an important element of what we did with Carter.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not a typical workshop or meeting. Really, this is a town administrator led goals workshop. So,
Right.
yeah, I just want to make sure that we're kind of in agreement in that, and that you understand our expectations going into that meeting, so that we don't all turn up and
Right.
not know what we're doing.
Yeah.
I guess.
We're
So,
gonna need a bunch of Nerf guns.
You can bring my, you can have my gavel if you
Yes.
Okay.
We'll come with some ideas too, but
are we all going to have buzzers? We can chalk each other when we don't like comments.
exactly. It's like Milgram.
No, I'm gonna have water balloons ready at the throw. So
All right.
that way, I can make a mess.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so we'll work with the logistics on that.
Yep.
And,
And is it alright if I conference with Doreen on that to get some ideas and some feedback on what happened last
Absolutely.
time? Okay.
Great.
that works.
Great.
Okay. Okay, so that's what we'll do. Any other questions or comments on the select board goals?
Are we gonna record it? Because this will be the third one. The first one was recorded, the second one wasn't, but I think that was more due to COVID than anything else. I think we all know how I feel about recording stuff. I think it's good for going back and looking at things. So how does everybody feel?
Look, if you wanna record it, we can record it. It doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't
I
bother
mean,
me.
that's my personal
but we're setting
belief.
expectations, so that's all.
I mean, all of our meetings are recorded, but is there anybody who doesn't want this recorded? Let's talk about this now and get that vetted and not have this discussion the day of the meeting.
Correct.
Well, it sounds like everybody's okay with it, so
Yeah.
let's record.
Okay. We'll get those logistics done with Grafton Cable TV. Okay. All right.
I'll actually, that dovetails into my TA report when I get there.
Okay. All right. Anything else on select board goals? All right. Next up, select board reports. Does anyone have any reports to give? Doreen.
I do. So we had a library building committee meeting last week. I'm actually going to let Evan handle that one because I think a lot has transpired over the course of the last week. But also we had 2 fire chief search committee meetings last week where we ran interviews, and in my opinion, it went great. It couldn't have gone better. I want to commend Evan for his leadership and keeping everybody organized. And we had really good questions. More importantly, we had great candidates. So we've picked 5 that are going to go through the assessment center, and we will be able to bring, the hope is 3 in front of the board to interview in October. And we're going to have a tough decision, which is a great problem to have. So I was thrilled and excited coming out of those interviews. Like I said, I can't praise the process enough. I thought it went really well, and I'm excited. So that's it.
Okay. Any other select board member reports? So just want to let everyone know that the American Recovery Act Committee, the ARPA committee, met first time yesterday. We organized and got set forward. Evan led a great discussion with setting some of the expectations, and as we're gathering some more information on funding, we'll be disseminating that amongst this group. One thing I want to make note to the select board is that because it's a grant opportunity, this isn't subject to town meeting approval. So I asked that question last night to Dr. Cummings when he was facilitating the SFSF grants that back from the financial collapse that they gave to schools to help offset, and we didn't have to go to town meeting to allocate those grant funds. That was just done within the school committee with its budget process. So very much like what this committee is going to be doing is it's going to be vetting certain areas that include businesses that could have been possibly affected by the pandemic, looking at grant opportunities to help those businesses recover potential lost revenue up to a certain amount.
It could be utilized for anything related to COVID. There was a whole litany of things. And as we start preparing this information, we'll start disseminating this information. And then part of our process, and I think this is very important for this board to hear, but also the general public, is that there will be a public outreach component at a later date once we have more information and we start proposing ideas. So there will be a public input component, like a hearing base, like we did, Ray, for the when we did the fire study committee.
Yep.
Where we had 2 meetings where we invited the public to come and give feedback on reports and findings. So just want to let everyone know we're super excited for this. It's a good working group. It's got pretty good representation. We have a committee member at large, our finance director, superintendent of schools, school committee member, myself, Evan, and Paul Canoyer, and member at large, Marianne. So anyway, we've met. We're going to be meeting again next month.
And finance committee.
And finance committee. I'm sorry, Heather McHugh. Thank you very much. Yep, I knew I was missing one.
When you were going, I was picturing where people were sitting.
Yeah.
Keep it up.
Right. So anyway, that committee has met, and also just to let you know that the recycling committee will organize and meet for the first time next week, and I will get them kicked off and organized and get them all set so they can move forward with their initiatives and their plans based on the charge. Other than that, I don't have any other board or reports for myself. Does anyone have anything else they want to add or questions? Okay. TA reports.
Thank you. So first off, we received 2 OWL recording devices yesterday. Both of which, or actually one of which we tested today. We named it Frank.
Yep.
And it is a pretty cool device. So we played around with that for maybe a half an hour with Mr. Toma. We think it's going to do everything we want it to do. So there's a couple more little technology components, but none of which interferes with us being able to deploy them pretty rapidly. So the nice thing about the OWL is that it's pretty straightforward. You connect it to Zoom and it will start recording. It does 360-degree sound and video, as well as it pans the camera for you. So when you're talking, it picks you up and picks Matt up or whatever. So it's pretty cool. So we'll be able to use them pretty much right away, which is pretty neat. Any questions on the OWLs?
How are you going to teach committees to use it when you start using them right away?
So we talked about that a little bit today. We're going to have to come up with some kind of probably initial training. It is really straightforward. So it's basically, if you've used Zoom at all, it's just telling Zoom what camera to use and then telling Zoom to record. And we're off to the races. It does everything else. There's no other settings. There's a volume control and a mute button, and that's it. So it's neat. They're really smart. And it actually, I don't know if it's true or not, but it felt like it was learning. Because at first it wasn't doing a great job of picking us up, but by about 10 minutes in, it was doing a much better job, and then it started picking up 3 of us and splitting the screen into 3 different components, and it was pretty neat. So I think that people are going to enjoy that, and I think it's going to be a really nice tool.
Okay.
So we do have 2 of those. One will be upstairs, one will be on this floor, but they'll be on carts. So that's what we've decided to do, is a cart with a laptop. Just like, AV when you're in school and they brought in the TV. Just wheel it in, plug it in, and away we go. Well, back when I was a kid, there was TVs on carts.
We had those like my first year of kindergarten, and then after that they were gone.
Right. So that's exciting. We've been waiting for those for quite a while, so we were able to get those on yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Okay. Mary and I have been spending a great deal of time on trash bags, and the budget. And we are going to be requesting that we come before the board sometime in October to review that program. We have some issues with the bag fees because the cost has gone up quite a bit, and so we're going to be talking about fee changes in upcoming years, which I know is greatly unpopular, but I will show you the finances of it and show you why that's probably necessary and long overdue. So working on some trend data on that. I just wanted to put that out into the public to know that it's coming. Because I know that's not a popular conversation.
What do you think is necessary?
What?
What?
Changes to the bag fee. The
We could
cost.
probably put that on October 19th.
Yeah.
Would that be enough?
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Okay.
But I just wanted, I know that, you know, trash is always a hot topic.
The change isn't a decrease, I imagine.
No.
I can only imagine. Okay.
Evan, I think you said you're doing this, but can you provide trends from other communities that use pay-as-you-throw?
Yes, I can attempt to do that. We'll put together some data, whatever's available to us. We'll reach out.
Okay, thank you. Even just a couple.
Yeah.
So, you know, the public knows that we're not just making this decision in a bubble.
Yeah, and I've been working on a presentation to show trend data for Grafton as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, any other questions on that? It's just kind of a heads up. Technology upgrades, we're making really good progress. We've deployed a lot of new technology and cleaned up a lot of areas in which we had some concerns. So very excited to see some of that stuff roll out and watch you know, some of the major concerns we have be closed up. So that's really great. The Common project is close to done. We're waiting on National Grid, but if you took a ride up there today, you'd see that the pavers or the bricks are all done, and the soil's been replaced as well as it's been hydroseeded. So there's a couple little tweaks there, and then we're going to be having a conversation about a change order related to the gazebo, which is something we discussed earlier in the year. So the library, we continue to chip away. William's been working on procurement stuff. I've been working with Beth quite a bit on resolving the 3 punch lists. I don't have firm timeline information to give you. I'm meeting with Beth, I believe today's Tuesday, Thursday. She is out for a couple of days. And then we will circle back and firm up all of that timeline. So we did receive a lot of the shelving. I think we are going to push for an opening sooner rather than later and remove some of the items that aren't able to be shelved because we're still waiting for some things, even if we have to store them in that front room, but be able to allow people to access their library. So those are conversations that are ongoing. The punch list is going really well, and you know, items are really close to completion. So.
Why are there 3 punch lists?
So there's an architect's punch list, there's the OPM's punch list, and then there's Beth's punch list.
So those weren't put together in one document?
Well, they are, but we have them as 3 separate things we're working
So
on.
they all relate to the contractor?
No, some do, some do not.
I've never heard of 3 punch lists on a project.
Okay, so there's one punch list with 3 different inputs.
Okay.
They're really one document. We treat them as 3 for. This is how I've done it, and I treat it as 3 so that there's things I'm knocking out for this group, things I'm knocking off on the regular list, and then there's things that are you have to vet as either punch list or wish list, and you need to separate those 2, and so that's why I kind of separate some of that off. 46 Adams Road, the milking parlor barn thing, that's gone. It's been totally demolished. Property's been brought to grade and will be hydroseeded, I think, by the end of the week. So that's some pretty good progress. If folks have had a chance to drive by 8 Pine Street, you can see some really rapid movement happening on that site. They're making some really nice progress. And if you want to see it, I would go up now because you can see the buildings that were hidden in the forest there that, you know, you probably haven't seen in quite a long time. So it's looking pretty neat, and we're excited to see some progress there. And then, does anybody have any questions on any of that stuff before we go? For my staff appreciation segment, I want to recognize Beth Schrottman. So Beth is in the Treasurer Collector office. And if you've ever been by the Treasurer Collector office, you'll see that it's always decorated in some kind of theme. So right now it's an apple orchard. And that's primarily driven by Beth. Beth has also started a staff appreciation and birthday recognition bulletin board in the hallway, and ensures that people get like gifts and recognition, and puts out birthday emails and stuff. And I think that that's really important for staff morale, and I think that's a really cool thing that she does, just because she likes to. And I think that's really a kind thing. So I wanted to recognize her for that.
Nice.
Yeah. Any other questions, concerns, feedback anybody has for me?
I'm all set.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, good. Thank you, Evan. Next up, list of correspondence. Does anyone have any questions on any of the correspondences that we received?
I have one.
Yes.
The BVT Excess General Fund. How come we got 0 applied for us?
I don't know, to be honest with you. That's something that I saw come up as well, and I will have an answer for you.
Great, thanks.
All right, any other questions on correspondence? Okay, moving on to discussion item. So, based on a request, there was a discussion last week to put on here before we get to closing the fall town meeting warrant, to see if the board would like to review the Community Preservation Committee membership charge with respect to what the select board appoints on its regular basis based on the at-large membership. What was given out to you tonight was what the current bylaw membership calls for within the town, and then what a proposed update to the bylaw membership would be. So, if that's okay with the board, I want to turn this over to Colleen, if you want to just give a high-level overview.
Yep.
of this.
So, CPC by law has to have representation from 5 separate committees in town. Planning, it's planning, conservation, recreation, housing authority, and historic. And they have that. They also have 4 at-large members, and I would like to kind of see about tweaking some of those at-large seats, potentially designating them as either a select board rep or a member from the Veterans Affairs Committee. I'm particularly partial to the Veterans Affairs Committee getting a seat at the table for CPC, because they do, do a lot of monuments and things around town where CPC could be funding those projects, and I think it would be a nice partnership, and I think it would benefit Grafton to do that. So what we're talking about tonight is talking about putting it on the warrant to possibly change the bylaw to be a little more prescriptive with the membership, and maybe decrease it to 2 or 3 at-large members and assigning 1 or 2 to different committees. And how does everybody feel about that?
Anyone have any comments? So you want to reduce the size of the committee, Colleen? Is that
Nope,
what
the
it is?
size of the committee will still remain 9, but instead of having 4 at-large members, we get more prescriptive and say there'll be, say, 3 at-large members, and 1 has to come from the Veterans Affairs Committee, or 2 at-large members, and the Veterans Affairs Committee and the Select Board get representation on CPC.
I like the idea.
I don't have.
Sorry, is it okay if I speak,
Oh,
Peter?
yeah, go ahead. This is discussion.
So yeah, I particularly the Veterans Affairs. I think I could go either way on the select board. But I do think we've put a lot of effort to in veterans committees in the past 6 months, and I think it's a great recommendation. I don't know how I feel though about eliminating somebody right now who's serving on CPC. I don't know where they are in the process. I don't know if there's someone whose term is coming up and we do it at that time. That's still up for discussion, but I thank you for bringing it forward. I do think that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a great question on logistics, Doreen. So, the way I would look at it is that every year there's some at-large member that comes off that committee, correct? And then there's the appointment process. So I would think that this would probably coincide with, how I would like to see this maybe go forward. If we want to put this on I don't hear any objections to putting this on town meeting warrant for the town to decide. But I do think that's a great question. Like, what do you do for that member who may not be on the Veterans Committee? You know what I mean? How would that play out? And I would just say when we come to our annual appointment process in June, then we would then implement that part if the town decides to change the bylaw. I didn't know how anyone else felt about it, but that seemed like a logical choice.
Yeah, I'd
Or
want to
approach.
keep it tidy. I wouldn't want someone to just all of a sudden be ejected from their term. They were appointed for a term that I believe that they should be able to serve. So however that language would have to reflect that so that it remains tidy would be best.
We have someone on CPC who is also on the Veterans Committee, so who is a member at large. So I mean, I think that's I think that's the best approach, is maybe to wait until the timeline is up, and then we evaluate from there. But just thinking too, there could be some crossover too. There could be people who sit on committees who also are already an at-large member, and we could just switch that as well. So, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I guess, just to ask the question, just no one has any objection to putting a placeholder in that town meeting warrant then for this bylaw change?
No.
Okay. All right, so to be continued. I think once we have warrant language drafted up, Colleen, and as we work through the town to getting that done, we may want to notify members of CPC and just give them the heads up that this is coming down the pike and this is what we're asking town meeting to consider.
Mm-hmm.
And work with, I suggest, Evan work with town council just to make sure that it's stated in the prescriptive format of what our discussion is tonight. Okay. All right. So next up here, we have the close of the fall town meeting warrant. I wanted to make sure we put this last so we could have this discussion here. I didn't want to close the warrant and then have this discussion. But
I think I have a warrant if you want a
we
warrant.
have a copy of that. So here's the current draft. Can you email a copy to Doreen for me, please?
Yep.
She has it remotely. Thank you. Doreen, you should be getting an email momentarily of just the draft warrant with placeholders.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
So just wanted to go over real quick and give the select board just kind of one final review for the annual fall town meeting warrant. If there is any questions on what's presented and what's going to be presented, or anything in addition that you feel that we may need to add, I want to take this moment to go over that.
You want us to run down what's already here?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay. Me to do that?
I can do it, or you can do it, whatever you want to do.
I'll do it. Why not?
I'll just correct you if you're making a mistake.
I know you will. I would expect nothing less. So we've done this a little bit differently. The first 16 articles on this 17 already. 17 articles on this warrant are by consent, and those are items that we felt were pretty basic in nature. So one is to Article 1 accepts a parcel of land at 101 Pine Street that's being donated to the town. Number 2 accepts a donation of a parcel of land at 5 Rear Carriage House Lane. That's submitted by the Conservation Commission. Article 3, also from the Conservation Commission, will be land numbered as 11 Rear Appaloosa Drive. Number 4 is to appropriate $47,000 from CPC and used to develop passive recreation park on land located at 95 North Street. Article 5 is to appropriate $13,000 from the Community Preservation Act for the restoration of historic town records. That's something that's been ongoing through the clerk's office. Article 6 is from me, and that is to transfer from available funds a sum of money for the Follett Street Well project account, and that is something that we do ongoing environmental testing at that site. We are looking from the sewer department to transfer $100,000 from retained earnings to the plant upgrade expansion account. Also from Board of Sewer Commissioners, this is Article 8, another $100,000 from sewer retained earning accounts to the major equipment repair replacement account. Next one is from the sewer department as well, Article 9. It's $1 million from sewer retained earnings to the inflow and infiltration inspection and repair account, also known as the I&I account.
Can I pause you for one second? Can we throw it up on the screen so Doreen can see it too?
Sure.
Sorry.
Absolutely, that's a great.
I have my email open, so either way,
We
doesn't
can put
matter.
it up for the public as well. I think
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
Thank you.
All right. So I believe we're now on to page 5, which is begins with Article 10. This is submitted by DPW. This is to transfer money into the long-range tree removal capital account, and that's something we've been working on over the years, mostly dealing with caterpillar trees and trying to remediate that problem. This next one, Article 11, is to see if the town will vote to appropriate and transfer a sum of money for free cash to the design engineering of George Hill Road. So, as we've discussed, there is money appropriated by the legislature. We have been questioning the legislature as to whether or not we will actually get that money and when we may see that money. So, in talking with Paul, he wanted to include this transfer request so that either A, we find out before October whether we're going to see that money and we can pass over it, or B, we still don't know and we can discuss appropriating those funds with the understanding that if we get the grant or the money from the state, that we do not spend said money and we put it back. We're hoping for the knowing beforehand, but of course, information has not been quick to come out. So, and we don't want to we don't want to lose any more time on that project. So we need to be heading in a direction. We also have Article 12, also from Public Works. This is to appropriate and transfer some of money for Route 30 paving account to the Road Stabilization Override account. Article 13 is from DPW as well, and this is to transfer a sum of money for the Loader 38 rehabilitation project. So we are doing rehab work on one of our loaders. It was originally thought to be around $30,000. The total price is actually $55,000. It's still a tremendous value because that piece of equipment would be about $260,000 right now. So we're just going to move money around within the budget to cover that cost. Article 14.
So before you move on to that,
Yeah.
back to 12. I've never heard of the Route 30 paving account. What is that?
So that's an internal account. So we were doing work on Route 30 and had put money into there, and it's left over or it's unspent, and we're going to move it now into the stabilization
so this
account.
Is just housekeeping.
It's housekeeping. That's why it's part of consent. It's just housekeeping.
All right. Any idea how much?
Not off the top of my head.
I think we're still working on the final number.
Okay.
I think there's some accounting work to be done. Yeah, because I didn't see that in the original either. Okay, so Article 14 is DPW. This is authorizing you, the select board, to negotiate with property owners by gift, purchase, or eminent domain of certain temporary and permanent easements abutting Milbury Street and Crosby Road that are necessary for the laying of sidewalk. Article 15, same thing, which is the select board to negotiate with property owners, except this is real property abutting Follett Street that are necessary for the replacement of Depot Street Sutton Bridge. So that's the bridge at that intersection, and there's some easements that are necessary along the footings of that bridge. Article 16 is again more easements, and this is for real property abutting George Hill Road, Leland Street, Soap Hill Road, Stowe Road, Fay Mountain Road, that are necessary for the improvements of George Hill Road, Leland Street, Soap Hill Road, Stowe Road, Fay Mountain Road.
So Evan, these three right here, is this something that you're gonna come back in the spring after we negotiate the easements, or?
Yeah,
Because
so,
this is, this is by gift, purchase, or eminent domain, which requires a 2/3 vote.
yes.
And so that's just allowing us to do the negotiations.
Yeah, and yeah, because right now town meeting is the only one that can do that, so this is transferring that authority to
Yeah,
you to do
okay.
that. Okay, Article 17 is to identify specific programs or activities on which funds may be expended or that are held in the School Extended Services Revolving Fund and established on May 13th, 2019. This is due to a Attorney General's ruling from 2019 that we did not include the proper language on our original warrant, and thus we are fixing that. This next one, Article 19, seeks to change the dates of town meeting to, from the third Saturday, let me back up. You always have your town meetings on Monday night here. We're looking to change them to the Saturdays in the same weeks, starting at 10:30. So the spring session of the annual town meeting would be held on the second Saturday in May of each year, and the fall session would be on the third Saturday in October. Both sessions begin at 10:30 a.m. If there is unfinished business, then subsequent meetings shall be held on the following Saturday mornings at 10:30 until final adjournment. Article 20 is to transfer and appropriate a sum of $1.5 million from the Roads Improvement Stabilization Fund to the Road Improvement Capital Expenditures Fund. So that is your $1.5 million override. It goes into one account. We need to then have it appropriated to the account where we can expend it. And finally, Article 21, to see if the town will vote to transfer appropriate sum of money from available sources to the stabilization fund and the capital stabilization fund, or take any other action relative thereto. So this is from the sale of 8 Pine Street. We received $980-ish and change $1,000. That goes into a reserve receipt account for appropriation, RRFA account. We then need to move that money out of there and into someplace for appropriation, spending, savings, whatever we decide to do. Mary and I, with this article, are going to be making a recommendation that we place roughly 50% in the stabilization fund and the rest into the capital stabilization fund. So that
Municipal capital stabilization fund.
Municipal capital stabilization fund.
It's big thing.
Okay. Can we make that little tweak?
Notes already made.
Okay. So those would be our recommendations currently, and that gives you flexibility to move that money and spend that money later, but it also infuses some money into the capital account that we've been talking about needs some assistance in catching up on some of those projects.
So would that include the 800 from the override?
Yeah, this is totally separate from all of that. The 800 from the override automatically goes into the municipal capital stabilization account.
Okay.
For appropriation, because it then gets appropriated in the capital article, which is where's the capital article, number 1?
Capital article is 18.
Sorry, did I skip over capital article?
You did. I figured you were coming back to it at the end.
You're supposed to be correcting me.
I figured you would come back to it.
Oh God, I'll come back to that at the end, just so we go over it. So yeah, that anyways, that's gonna be our recommendation. We can obviously make tweaks to that if the board feels differently, but we feel that our stabilization needs to be grown and our capital obviously can be a little bit more aggressive.
So Article 22 would be the CPC membership change that we just talked about, so that would be added.
Yep.
And then, if I may, I have another suggestion of a placeholder that I would like to see how the board felt tonight about possibly changing the town clerk's position from an elected position to an appointed position. It's not on the agenda to have an in-depth conversation about, but we could put it as a placeholder, so next week we could have the appropriate conversation to see if the board is in favor of doing that or not.
It didn't fly that well last time, but I don't have a problem putting it on as a placeholder.
Yeah, I watched that meeting today from 2017, and there was only one person that got up and objected to it. I just don't know if there was enough public education as to the benefits to Grafton, and even that position, changing it from elected to appointed. But that's for a later conversation.
Fine with me.
So as a placeholder for discussion, so we can close the warrant, sure.
Okay, so we would not close the warrant tonight, we would now close it next week, so we would have that conversation and then close it.
So it, just for the board's edification, it would be my recommendation that we don't close the warrant tonight, given that you've asked for a placeholder for Article 22. Like time to write and vet that properly,
Okay.
make sure that we word it correctly.
And I'm going to ask for a placeholder for the rescindment of the tax incentive for UPS.
So you would request to have those conversations on the, what's that, Peter, the
So you
28th?
wanna have that, you just want a placeholder on that, Ray, to have a discussion next
Well,
week?
just to hold it, just so we can have a discussion on it,
Okay.
so.
Okay, so I've got 3 articles then, that we need to place, so we're all, there's a meeting set for the 28th, by the way, which is next Tuesday. That was booked, last week at the workshop, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, so out of the 4 of us can meet at Ray, we just wanna make sure that you can meet this, cause that would be the meeting and where we discuss that.
I'm not going anyway.
Just ask.
You don't ask me to meet on Saturday, but.
Well, we're talking about that
Could be a
for
town
one of
meeting.
the town meeting on a Saturday.
Oh, that's
just letting
fine.
You know.
That's
All
fine.
Have we
okay.
figured out a plan for this town meeting on how to get it outdoors or anything like that?
Council and, the moderator and I are looking at that.
Great.
Just to also let you know too, okay, so let's get through this. So there's 3 potential warrant articles that we'll have just as placeholders, but we'll have a more in-depth discussion on those so we can put those on the agenda for the public to know that we're discussing that as just select board sponsored articles. And then at the conclusion of those discussions, regardless of whatever the outcome is, we will close the warrant on the 28th. Okay. Any other questions on the warrant? My question real quick is this is Depot Street in Grafton. Money to take down that property, that's included?
That is in the capital article.
The one I skipped and I need to come back.
So if you flip all the way to the back, there's Appendix A,
Thank you.
which outlines the capital projects. This is still in draft form, so
Okay,
more things could potentially be added or numbers could change.
okay.
Yeah, this is not a comprehensive, this is just us adding placeholders.
These are placeholders, yeah, I get that.
So
Yeah.
so that we don't miss them as things pop up.
Okay.
So, boiler room upgrades here at the municipal center. So we spend about $8,000 a year cleaning the system here. And so we want to add in a filtering system in the queue, as well as expand the number of plates that we use for cooling the building, so that we have a little bit more capacity. So the building was built with the specific capacity in mind, but as soon as those plates get even a little bit dirty, we start to overheat because that's exactly the capacity we have. We have no room for any margin. So we need to expand the number of plates we have, and we need to add this, oh man, Mr. Berger tells me what it's called all the time.
Thompson strainer?
Thompson strainer. It's like a giant sock, essentially, that you pull out.
I didn't know if you made that up or something, because I believe you, like, that's a Thurman spring or a Thompson
Exactly.
sock.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's written down somewhere
We
on
get
my
it from
desk.
Art Vanderlei. So the other one is the demolition of 60 Depot Street. I have gotten one price from that, so we believe that $30,000 will cover the cost of demo and leveling of the property. And then we have a finance request for $16,625 for financial software changeover. That's the Vadar conversation that we've been having.
Could that go?
What's that?
Could that go with that IT grant or no?
Potentially, I'm really struggling with the timeline though for when they're going to award that. So we're working on. We're definitely going to ask for money.
For sure.
Whether it's this money or not, I haven't decided yet. And this doesn't include any of the things on our capital item that we are, or the capital list that we need to stagger into here. So.
Awesome.
So, on boiler room upgrades, that seems like something that would, qualify for the recovery care money. I'm just wondering how you guys are balancing the prioritization of things within that funding source versus just out of our capital stabilization.
Yes, so the boiler room upgrades, we don't have forced air. We're not increasing airflow. We're not doing anything that really is related to public health. So I don't think that that's going to qualify
Okay.
in this particular instance. It may, and we can certainly double check, but I also don't want to miss the opportunity to do the repair because we're spending, you know, our ROI on this project is 6 years, which I think is great payback. But we're trying to balance that as best we can with, you know, the amount of, we have till 2024 to spend the ARPA money, which concerns me a little bit because if this process takes a year, now I'm back through the summer and we shut the AC in this building off for, you know, probably a total of 2 weeks in the hottest weeks of the summer. So I want to make sure that we're staying on top of that.
Okay.
I know that was kind of a round answer, but we're cognizant of it, but we're also trying to make sure that we can get, you know, keep things progressing.
Got it. Okay.
All right.
There's one other thing that didn't make this list. I'll just
Okay.
update you really quick. We're going to be asking for $15,000 to carpet 2 rooms at the municipal center. We just replaced the carpet in the select board's office and the building department, and it is gross under there. And I don't really want to, you know, have our staff working in there for any longer than we need to. And I'd like to just get it done. So that'll be
How old is that carpet? Do we know?
1954, I believe.
Oh, lovely.
I think you can get another 52 years. out
Yeah,
of it.
yeah, it's pretty.
I'm kidding. No, that should have been replaced years ago.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So we're just gonna move forward on that. That's all that I have. Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions on the warrant? Okay, so we'll bring back those 3 articles and those agenda items for next week. Moving forward, meeting minutes. I have meeting minutes for January 12th, September 7th, September 9th, and September 14th for 2021. Do I have a consent motion for all 4 meeting minutes?
I move the board vote to accept the meeting minutes of January 12th, September 7th, September 9th, and September 14th, 2020 as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none. All those by roll call, please. Ms. DeFazio.
DeFazio, aye.
Mr. Mead.
Mead eye.
Mr. Often.
Often I.
Ms. Roy.
Roy, aye.
Carlson, aye. Clear the motion carried unanimous. Thank you. We have no need to go into executive session tonight. So at this point in time, I can enter a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made second. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio.
DeFazio, aye.
Mr. Mead.
Mead eye.
Mr. Often.
Often I.
Ms. Roy.
Roy, aye.
Carlson, aye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.